Welcome to my channel, Geechee Lion Journey. I hope you're here for Geechee Lion and Geechee Lion Journey because that's what this particular vlog and video is. This is a video that has been on my mind to do for several months. The subject was in my mind for several months, but I haven't gotten around to really be able to work on it. Today, I was determined I was going to finish it for the most part, partially spurred by a vlog released today by one of my top 5 Filipino vloggers, and she basically entitled her vlog, "The Time for Filipino Love Is Now." And I don't know whether she's reading my mind. I'm talking about Sharon Lapu. She has often kind of covered the same subjects that I have, and this is one that has been on my mind for a while to do. And I just said, I'm sitting here, I'm in Davao City and alone here in the hotel room, small hotel or dormitory room here in Davao City. And I decided I was going to sit down here at this laptop and finish this today. So bear with me. Sat down and I actually typed up notes and things I wanted to say. A lot of things I could just say off the top of my head, but I wrote most of this down. And I hope again, I just want to say again, you're here. Welcome to my channel, Geechee Lion Journey. My name is Anwar Bilal Kente. About 6 months ago, I was inspired, or I felt a calling to create this outlet in the digital internet world to document the circumstances of the remaining part of my life's journey, which is really my journey to life. The other motivation for establishing this YouTube channel was to provide a platform to showcase and promote my creativity, especially and particularly in music. I want to say this at the beginning of this, that I believe in God and that God is responsible for whatever creation has come through me in the music field. I started as a musician when I was a teenager. But today, with this vlog, I want to highlight or put a spotlight on my experiences with the creation of music for the past 4 years or so. Yes, I started singing and performing original music in my teenage years, which is coincided with my years in college. I started going to college at the age of 16. When I was in a band with original band members that included my cousin Todd Fields, who played bass, his friend Gregory Phoenix, who played lead guitar, and at that time we had a vocalist, Jerry Wells. May he rest in peace. He passed away at an early age. Other people joined us later on. A special mention here to Lionel Dunn, who was an older gentleman who played saxophone and guitar. In the beginning, we called ourselves the Soul Inflamers. I consider myself to be significantly active as a musician starting in the mid to late 70s, which again, where the college is for me, up until 1988, which was the year I got married. During that time, I wrote several songs. Some I wrote with Todd and Greg. And I released one album on vinyl called Alone at Last, which I'm in the process of re-releasing that album next week, within a few days. Also made an extended play cassette called Rulers of the World, but I didn't formally release it until a couple of years ago. I released it digitally on the digital platforms. Sat in with a few bands, mostly for enjoyment. I didn't make much money. Did it for the love of the craft. Anyway, you were likely attracted to the title of this vlog. Filipino love brought me back. I've alluded to this and made this statement a couple of times, maybe in a previous vlog or YouTube comment. You could say God brought me back, but it was done through Filipinas, in the person of Filipinas. I would not be where I am today as a creative musician without that Filipino love. I know that's a bold statement that some may find controversial, but at this stage in my journey and the years of blood, sweat, and many tears and pain I experienced, I frankly don't give a damn about the response of trolls, haters, naysayers, devils, enemies, and etc. Brought me back from what, you may ask? In short, I was brought back from creative death. I mean, many years I didn't create anything. I said I was active for about 12 years, I would say from like 76 to 1988. I got married in 1988, and from that point on, life happened, shit happened. And to make a long story short, I lost my will and desire to be a musician. I stopped writing songs. I stopped singing. I basically stopped playing the keyboards. I had 3 keyboards in the house, 4 keyboards, I think, collecting dust. I just died creatively and in other ways. I was generally an unhappy person throughout most of my life and most of that time. Fast forward to 2017 and 2018. Formal divorce process started. I decided I need to try some new things. So I tried international travel, went to Mexico, started going to Mexico. I think I ended up making 6 or 7 trips in all to Mexico over the next 3 years or so. Volunteering, I did a volunteer tour duty in Mexico with the group All Hands and Hearts, which I just worked with them again here in the Philippines, in Tacloban. But I knew things had to change in a major way. During that time, I began to reminisce about my previous positive experiences with Filipinos and Filipinas. Mostly they occurred on the job where I met several Filipina nurses while I worked for a hospital on the south side of Chicago. Romita Cison and Catherine Mendoza come to mind as my favorites, a couple of my favorites, Filipinas. They gave me great support. I also had several Filipinos as personal doctors, physicians, and specialists for me and my family. They were always supportive and pleasant to be around. It is notable that my first office after taking that accounting job at that hospital was located in the former dormitory, which was to house Filipina nurses who had immigrated into America from the Philippines. Catherine Mendoza, I think, was one of them. Over the years, I felt the Filipinas' caring and loving spirit that provided shelter and support for me while I was in a hostile work environment. Filipinas were the sweetest women to me by far. No competition from no one else. My best Filipina friend, Catherine Mendoza, later on in 2019, she contacted me out of the blue and invited me to a birthday party early in 2019 for one of my Filipino doctors, Dr. Rogelio Calve. May he rest in peace. He passed away a couple years ago. The birthday party took place at a Filipino restaurant on the south side of Chicago. And you know, they had the lechon and the food laid out on the table, of course. And yes, there was karaoke. I sang a couple of songs. As a matter of fact, I may post one on my YouTube channel. I took a couple of videos. This was on a Saturday. I left the birthday party and went straight to yoga class at Satnam Yoga. Yes, Satnam Yoga. That's another Filipina connection and a source of Filipina love. I'll say more about that in a few minutes. By the way, Catherine Mendoza has been here in the Philippines visiting her mother and her home province in northern Luzon, the Kalinga province. She's been here for the past 2 months. She is just returning to Chicago this week. And I had a chance I wanted to go and be with her at her mother's birthday party, but of course I was in Tacloban, so I couldn't do that. Kathy's mother just celebrated reaching the age of 100 years old. Yes, Filipina love brought me back. I came back from the Mexico Volunteer Project, the one I was telling you about, in September 2018. One of the things I began to do was drive for Uber. You heard of Uber, the rideshare company. Made a few bucks, burned a lot of time. One day I picked up a passenger whose destination was a hidden, out-of-the-way building that housed a yoga studio. It was walking distance from where I grew up on Washington Boulevard on the west side of Chicago, which, my home address was right off of Washington Boulevard. Actually, it's 133 North Mozart, which is like a half a block north of Washington. My female passenger told me of her troubled life. I don't know if she was having trouble with her boyfriend or what, and how she came and she wanted to make sure she got to this yoga place to find some relief and consolation, I guess, for what she had been suffering or going through. I was impressed by what the woman said, and then after talking to her, I made up my mind, hey, I'm going to go back there and visit that place, which was Satnam Yoga. Satnam Yoga. If you see this picture here, right here, that where I got my finger pointing, that is the front of the building of Satnam Yoga. And that beautiful Filipina is there. I'm going to talk to you about her right now. A few days later, I went back to Satnam for a tour. It was then I met Paul. Here she is, and you see several pictures of her here. Paul, is a Filipina who is the director who manages the place. I was greatly impressed by her charisma, her presence, her demeanor, her compassion with me. And I realized right away that I needed to experience what Satnam, Paul herself, and the entire atmosphere had to offer. Over the next 20 months or so, I attended an average of 3 classes a week at Satnam. Paul usually conducted a class twice a week. And I was there without fail. Matter of fact, the first year that I attended there in 2019, I ranked number 3. I was the number 3 attendee of yoga classes at Satnam. Only 2 other people attended more classes than me. So that shows you how dedicated I was, and how what this woman helped create with the help of her husband, I will say. What that atmosphere did really made a big impact on me as I started going there in March 2019. And there were several types of classes: yoga, Tai Chi, medication, dance movement, and Qigong. And it's pronounced Qigong, even though they use QI for whatever reason. There were other Filipino session leaders there. A favorite of mine was Venus Sabay. Look at the two pictures above my head. That is Venus Sabay. She is a Filipina as well. As you can see, she talks about Qigong classes. And Qigong is, I guess, offshoot or derivative of martial arts. And she was a student, I guess, a master in that field. She led a Qigong class every week. And I found out later, months later, that she was a musician. I didn't even know. When I saw Venus, I would automatically smile, and Venus always had a smile for me. Through our interactions in and out of class, Carl Paul and Venus, these marvelous Filipinas, I know it rhymed, I wasn't intending to do that, but they provided much needed support to me spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically. You know, through the yoga and through the disciplines of Qigong and all of that. I remember now, January 2020, in the midst of the pandemic, I had spent a full day with the Satnam Yoga experience. I remember the last class was by a teacher who was about to leave Chicago. He's one of my favorite teachers, but he was leaving Chicago to go to Florida, I believe. And also there was a beautiful lady instructor there from Colombia, whom I had grown quite fond of. She was there. So just so happens that day, the Satnam staff was invited to a party at Crown Paul's house. Since I was driving, I was the only one that's driving, I offered to take the staff members over there to the party at Crown Paul's. When I got over there, I parked my car. Well, actually, even before I parked my car and let the people out, Crown Paul found out that I was outside in my car. She, on the spur of the moment, invited me into that party, even though I was not staff. She graciously invited me to join that party. I parked my car and went into the house. And on that fateful day, very fateful day, I saw the smiling faces and happy moods of the staff members, the great, joyous, jovial atmosphere, the delicious food laid out on the table. And there it was, a standard item found in many Filipino homes. A karaoke machine is set up with the mics, big screen TV and all. Karaoke in that environment. And with all the goodwill and support I had received from Crown Paul, Venus, and the Satnam organization, I felt most comfortable making an effort to sing around people again. I told you I hadn't touched it. It was a feeling that I rarely had during the previous 30 years or so. I didn't say 30, I said 30 years. I sang I Can't Help Falling in Love by Elvis Presley and After the Loving by Engelbert Humperdinck. It was on that day I became inspired again to be a musician and singer. In the month after the experience of that party, I wrote my first original song in almost 30 years. It was inspired by this wonderful Filipina here that you see, Crown Paul. And the name of the song was Throw It in the Fire. I got the idea from the fire ceremonies that Kern Paul would perform during the celebration of the new moon. Kern Paul was the first one to hear my rough draft of the recording I did in the basement of my house. And she said, "Oh, sounds nice," something like that. Outside of my job and people who stayed in my household, I had spent more actual time with Kern Paul, this woman right here. I had spent more actual time with her than any other person, with her husband, Siriati, being a close second. Now, Siriati will become my first music engineer and producer during my musical rebirth and comeback. Now, this thing with my relationship with Siriati and with Con Paul, who was his wife, and I didn't even know that was his wife, that's a story within itself, which I won't get into. But suffices to say, as I end part 1 of this series, yes, Filipina love brought me back. Thank you, Karen Paul. Thank you, Venus. Thank you, Romita. Thank you, Catherine Mendoza. As I leave you in peace, Assalamu alaikum, from Davao City in the Philippines. We'll be back shortly in a day or 2 days with part 2 of this. Filipina love brought me back. Thanks.